Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Luke and it has been a while and I apologise for that. It's just the way things have worked out. Christmas was busy, Deepa was ill, things haven't been happening on the channel. For those of you who are worried about Doctor Who reactions, do not fret, they are coming back, but we're just getting a few in the can before we upload, just in case we get any more bumps in the road, and hopefully my computer has enough space. But for now, we're going to be talking about Doctor Who Flux. Flux as a whole is something that I really enjoyed. I appreciated the boldness of Flux, I think. Do I think it could have been one episode longer? Yeah, I do. I think that could have benefited, but did I hate the series? No. My favourite thing about Flux was the characters. I think characters drive a story. I think characters are very important, probably the most important. I think they're more important than story, which I think some people go, hang about. Story is the most important thing. You're a wannabe writer, Luke. You should know that story is the most important thing. I don't think it is. I think it's characters. I think Flux has had the best set of Doctor Who characters we've had in a really long time. I'd say since mid-Moffat era. Obsessed with Carvanista. Loved Swarm and Azure, the best original villain since The Silence, I would say. Loved Belle, loved Vinda. And Dan. Dan has joined the team and Dan is excellent. Big thumbs up for the characters of Flux. I think they're sort of scene stealers. And the existing characters, 13th Doctor, Yasmin Khan, don't know why I full named her, they were the best they've ever been. One thing I saw a lot of complaints about actually was the cliffhangers. People were complaining that the cliffhangers were resolved too quickly in the next episode, and to that I say don't be ridiculous. It's Doctor Who, it happens all the frickin' time. Classic Who is the same format of Flux where, you know, it was a cliffhanger every time and the cliffhangers were resolved quickly at the next episode because it gets the next episode going. It's happened in New Who many times before. Aliens of London, the Doctor puts his electrocuting ID card onto a Slovene. It attacks all the Slovenes, so all the main characters who are being hunted by Slovene can escape. Empty Child, the start of the Doctor dances, he tells them all to go to their room and they go to their room, everyone's able to run away. I could go on. Sontaran stratagem, you know, the poison. You think Wilf's going to die in the car, Poison Sky starts, Sylvia smashes a window open, out he gets. Rise of the Cybermen into Age of Steel. I mean, they're surrounded by Cybermen and the Doctor gets rid of them within seconds of the Age of Steel starting. I can understand it as a criticism, but to peg it as something that is just Flux related, I disagree. Moving on, I think we'll talk about each episode individually. I think that's probably the best way to do it. So we're going to start with the Halloween Apocalypse. I love the title, always have. When they announced the title, I remember seeing people on Twitter being like, oh, is that really what it's called? What's wrong with it? I would go as far as to say not only one of my favourite episodes of Flux, but I think it's one of my favourite episodes of Doctor Who. It's my most watched episode of Flux. I love it. I think it's really good. The opening sort of scene above the acid lake with the Doctor and Yaz is perfect. It's such a good chaotic return to Doctor Who and a reintroduction to these characters. We obviously meet Dan in this episode and I think he's got a really nice character introduction, a companion introduction even. He's instantly likeable. Then we meet Swarm, who has, you know, a brilliant villain entrance into things. It's kind of like spooky, but then when old Swarm becomes new Swarm, he immediately brings the camp energy that he has by staring into the camera and telling the Doctor that it's trick or treat, which is everything I would want from a Halloween episode. And in Swarm's opening scene, his introduction, I was so happy that the Division storyline was being continued from episode 1 because I didn't know how long it was going to take. I didn't know whether it was going to be resolved or saved up for Jodie's last episode. I didn't know what was happening with Division when we left it in the Series 12 finale, so I was very happy. We were opening Series 13 with these Division agents going to see Swarm, who was their prisoner. Carvanista was introduced in this episode and he is my world. I'm obsessed with him. A dog alien. It's very Russell T Davies. Look at the Jadoon, the Sisters of Plenitude, the Shan Sheaf in Sarah Jane Adventures, the pig slaves. He loves to cross over an animal with a human and call it an alien. And I think Carvanista would fit very well in Russell T Davies' era. So if he wants to bring Carvanista back, I'm on board. I'm happy. Him and Dan's banter begins in episode 1 and it doesn't stop for the rest of the series. absolute series highlight. I think it's so good, their little relationship. Claire is introduced in episode 1, and it feels unexpected and maybe a bit like shoehorned into episode 1, but I think that's deliberate, because that random scene where she runs up to the doctor and Yaz is instantly memorable because everybody was like, what the fuck was that? I was just waiting around to see Claire again. And that whole scene she had with the Weeping Angel stalking her literally to her front door. I know Deepa's going to absolutely despise that scene, which made me love it even more. Then we meet Vinder, and to be fair, he doesn't do an awful lot in episode 1. I like his character introduction, and I like him as a character. I actually really like him, not just because I fancy him, but it's a nice introduction regardless. But it is a bit, when you just watch episode 1, Vinder's introduction doesn't stand out. It's a busy episode, and it doesn't stand out as like a, oh my god, who's he? It was just like, yeah, Vinder's there. The Sontarans pop up as well, which I really wasn't expecting, because I was just convinced before Flux started that they were an episode 2 thing only. It was a welcome surprise, because I've been saying for years now, as much as I adore Strax, because I really love Strax, he had softened the Sontarans a bit, and I've been very desperate for war-hungry Sontarans for a while. I really wish Peter Capaldi came across them, because him facing off them would have just been the best. My biggest headache with episode 1 is Azure as a character being in the Arctic. I get that it's her punishment. It's her version of Swarm being imprisoned by the Division. The Division have placed her in the Arctic and sort of made her forget who she was. But it's just some things, I don't know, maybe I'm slow, and maybe you guys can clarify for me, so please do if you know the answers to this. The guy with her, like, was she genuinely in love with him? Who was that? Was he, I presume, a Division agent sort of keeping watch on her, and did they sort of fall in love? Or is it all just put in her head that she just thinks she's in love with this guy and he just has to play along with it? That spinny, floaty alarm thing that went off, is that telling her that Swarm is back? If so, why did she just destroy it and be like, nah? And she seems to know what it was. And I don't know. Am I just slow? I'm a bit lost with that one. So if anybody can clarify in the comments section, feel free to do so. But the cliffhanger was brilliant, and it gave me goosebumps on a rewatch. I teared up on my last rewatch. I think a lot of it comes down to Jodie's performance of feeling that the universe sort of breaking because of the flux. And I love flicking between all these characters. Vinder, Claire, Swarm and Azure, Diane. Everybody's suddenly going through something in that last moment. It's a good cliffhanger. So overall, episode 1, super enjoyable. I love it a lot. Okay, on to episode 2, War of the Sontarans, which is another banging title, by the way. The opening, the black and white opening with Jodie waking up and seeing the house, it felt weird at the time, but a bit like I said with Claire, it also was like so detached from the rest that you're asking that question throughout the whole series. What the hell was that house about? They're so random that they stand out, and I kind of like it. And I think that's all deliberate. I don't think that was like they're accidentally random. They're meant to be. If we suddenly went to the house in episode 6, which we do, if that was the first time we'd seen it, people would complain that we never saw it before. So to shoehorn it in there works. Mary Seacole was excellent. I loved her as a guest character. I love what Chris Chibnall does with historic characters. He's actually quite different in his approach. They just tag along as a companion, and I kind of like that. Mary Seacole does it. She is the Doctor's companion for this episode because Yaz and Dan are elsewhere. It happened in Spyfall Part 2 with Ada Lovelace. It happens as far back as Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, when the Doctor wasn't travelling with the Ponds, he was with Queen Nefertiti of Egypt. Dan and Yaz disappearing was quite a moment. I loved it, and I loved the moment where the TARDIS didn't have a door and Jodie was just running around it. That was like, whoa. I feel it is a bit weirdly convenient that Yaz ends up at Atropos where Vinder was, but I presume Swarm and Azure have brought Yaz there to make her part of the Maury, which is part of their plan in episode 3. Dan's parents are introduced in this episode, and oh my lord, they are scene stealers. They ate every moment they were on screen. I'm obsessed with them, particularly his mum. They needed more screen time. I don't think we will, but I hope we see them again. Swarm and Azure are at their best in this episode, I think. Swarm and Azure just fly in and shake it up completely and take control of the entire thing, and they do it with such ease and effortless class. I'm like obsessed with them. We'll move on to episode 3, Once Upon Time, which is oddly one of my favourites. I think it's a bit of a Marmite episode. I think some people were like, not for me, that was too much, and some people were like, whoa, that was everything. I think it was everything. I think other than the Halloween apocalypse, Once Upon Time was my favourite. From the beginning, I adored the unexpected opening of Belle. I loved the surprise appearance from the Daleks. I really wasn't expecting that, so I yelled at the TV. I didn't mind the CGI. I know some people are really moaning about CGI Daleks, but like, it was one scene, it was made in a pandemic, and Doctor Who's CGI has been far more questionable than that. So moving on, the gang being thrown into their pasts, I think was great. It's a good way to learn about Vinder's past, and I think he solidifies himself as a brilliant Doctor Who character in this episode. We're also introduced to the Grand Serpent, who's a great secondary villain. Yaz was with a policewoman in a car when she was in her past, and at one point it took on the form of Jodie, and she was just waffling on. And it's every time it makes me laugh. I genuinely think it was one of my favourite scenes of Flux. And the Weeping Angel sort of appeared in this episode and was sort of stalking Yaz. It's nicely planted here to make episode 4 work. So all these random bits that pop up in each episode, it's justified by the things coming back. And I think the Weeping Angels were great here. I think they were nicely handled. I loved Yaz seeing it in the mirror. I loved it coming through the video game. Jumping into the characters' pasts is a sublime, excellent way of bringing back Joe Martin's Fugitive Doctor, who is quite possibly one of my favourite aspects of Chris Chibnall's era. I was just going to say Doctor Who in general, and I think it is. The scenes at Atropos with the Fugitive Doctor and her team taking on Old Swarm, I think was one of the reasons why I rate the episode so highly. I think it was the highlight of the series for me. I just loved that whole bit. I could have someone edit all of that together and I could watch that on repeat. It would be so good. We found out that Dan was Carvanista, so I'm presuming that Vinder was Lee and that Yaz was Gat from series 12, or the other way around. I don't know. I don't know if it's gender specific. It would be nice to learn a bit more about that, but I don't know if we ever will. I think, having to do a series in a global pandemic where clearly you're probably only allowed a certain amount of people on a set or involved in a show, I think the way they did it is incredibly smart, and I applaud them, because I imagine the pandemic was a real kick in the teeth when trying to plan your swan song series of Doctor Who. I can imagine it's an absolute bitch, so I think they handled it incredibly well. Another thing, like the house and Claire popping up early, because if they only popped up late, people would complain that they didn't pop up before, I think is Tecteun briefly appearing in this episode. It felt jarring, but again, 100% deliberate. As horrible as it was, and it was quite horrible to see, I loved the Doctor shutting out Yaz. It's a wonderful bit of character work. I normally don't like the Doctors treating companions badly. I really dislike the way the 10th Doctor handles Martha Jones. But I think it's easier to take when the Doctors travel with the companion for as long as the Doctor and Yaz have been together than Martha, who, bless her, was just a newbie to it all and didn't really know what the hell was going on. And she just had this rude guy. Whereas Yaz has trusted the Doctor for so long that the Doctor being snappy is just like you having an argument with your friend. And Jodie's desperation to get back to see what happened in her past is one of the best performances she's ever given as the Doctor, but also one of the best Doctor performances I think I've seen. And then the cliffhanger's great. The angel has the TARDIS. I mean, I think everybody was going to tune into the next episode, which was the Village of the Angels. The opening was great. Claire and Jericho, again, how I was saying the characters in this series are the best. Claire and Jericho, fabulous, love them. And the angels are perfectly handled. I was a bit worried because we've never, other than Class, I guess, which didn't really go anywhere, which I'm still bitter and sad about, and other than Big Finish, we've never had an on-screen Weeping Angel moments written by somebody other than Stephen Moffat. It's always been Stephen Moffat. But they were handled so well. When they sent Yaz and Dan back in time, that was so good. That scene where he's trying to get the torch to work, and in the flick of the light they close their eyes and the Weeping Angel just attacks. Old Peggy getting people to count the gravestones was like really spooky and cool and really built up the tension. Claire turning into one, having one in her eye, having the wings, having her arms turn to stone, having one in her mind. It was just, that was really good, really well done. The image of an angel becoming the angel, you know, Claire's drawing, the Doctor screwing it up and even burning it, and that's still not really being enough. It came out of the TV screen. There was angels in the walls. They were ringing the doorbell. It was just like pure Weeping Angel goodness within that one episode. I loved the idea of the Weeping Angel working for Division and recalling the Doctor to Division and having her turn momentarily into an angel version of the Doctor is one of the best images the show's ever had. Next episode was Survivors of the Flux. From the off, we come across an Ood. Most welcome. Who doesn't love an Ood? Having the Doctor come face to face with Tecteun was great. That was something that we, I think, needed to see from the Series 12 finale, because what Tecteun did was irredeemable and horrible, and to actually have the Doctor face her is a moment. I wish it went on a bit longer, to be fair, but Jodie was great. That desperation to know about her life and that sort of what if moment that she kept giving. I think she's going to ask those forever until she finds out. I loved Dan, Yaz and Jericho traveling the world. It felt very like early 2000s kind of like The Mummy or Pirates Caribbean or National Treasure. It felt like those sort of vibes. It was a really nice, unique and different aspect, and I want a Big Finish series of that. Please. Thank you. Kind regards. The hologram, it's so beautiful, it's so nicely done, and it hurts after watching Eve of the Daleks and having certain things confirmed. I love it. The Grand Serpent, or Prentice, whichever one you'd prefer, sort of starting unit and popping in now and again, was kind of cool. He's kind of a cool, calm customer. It was all nice callbacks to 70s Unit. It was callbacks to Resolution, as to why Unit sort of stopped. And having Kate Stewart back was the icing on top of a very good cake. She's everything. And again, a Big Finish series of her going dark and running away from the Grand Serpent. I'd like to see it. Or hear it, I guess. The Sontarans returned again, which was another surprise, because I was convinced they were an episode 2 thing only. I don't know why I'd convinced myself of that, but I loved having them pop back, and Swarm and Azure pop back as well, and they just make cliffhangers work. The Vanquishers, the last episode of Flux. People sort of felt it was rushed and crammed. I can understand, but at the same time, it didn't really bother me. I think things were juggled well. There was a lot to juggle, and I think it was juggled well. There was a specific bit that I didn't like, which I will talk about at the end. The Doctor taking off the conversion plate and appearing as multiple Doctors in multiple places is the kind of shit you can only get away with in Doctor Who. It's so ridiculous in Doctor Who. I love it. One of the Doctors facing Swarm and Azure was a great moment, and Azure's speech is a 10 out of 10 villain monologue. She was so good in that moment. And Swarm sort of breaking down the house, which is sort of the Doctor's past lives. It was a beautifully shot scene. I loved that some bits were black and white and some bits weren't. Vinder and Diane, they were a great little unexpected team up. I think they were great together. I loved it. A little bit obsessed with their scenes. Kate Stewart meeting Dan and Yaz felt really like surreal to me. Like, not in a bad way, I loved it, but it was just like, whoa. But having a Moffat era character come through and meet Chibnall characters, my whole brain was just like, whoa. I love when this shit happens. And the hug that the Doctor gives Yaz, which I'm so glad happened. It hits harder once Eve of the Daleks confirmed. the things it confirmed. Carvanista was even more of my favourite after it was revealed that he was her companion, that he can't talk about it, he can't talk about their time together, the division, all of that stuff. And finding out his species had died. He was already my favourite character, but the Vanquishers cemented that he was my favourite character. It's going to sound really twisted and dark, but in a way, I kind of wish we saw the Lupari being killed. That sounds horrific. Only because, just because the Sontaran came in and said it, you know, it kind of felt like, well, that could be a lie. Like, you could just be lying. Oh, we haven't seen anything as an audience, so is that true? Turns out it was, which is very sad. But I love that Carvanista sort of got revenge for that, and I think that really drove him to help fight the Sontarans. There was a scene that was so the Doctor, which was when the Grand Serpent was interrogating the Doctor, but she managed to spin it round and just started interrogating him. It was a small moment, but I loved it because it was so the Doctor. Like, Jodie is so good. And Chris Chibnall is better than people give him credit for. He really is. He writes those scenes so very well. I really liked the Sontarans getting top billing over the Daleks and Cybermen. It's something that should have happened a while ago, and I'm very glad it's happened now. And that was one of my favourite things about the Vanquishers as well. Although people said it was rushed and a bit messy, there's so many little bits in it that I really love and appreciate that I can't be mad at it as an episode. Jericho... I think a lot of us knew he wasn't going to make it because he was such a lovely one-off character, but he is also that sort of character where what more could you do with him? It's not, you know, companion exit, Doctor Regeneration level emotional, but it's the next one down. It's very sad. Using Passenger to absorb the flux was great. I think that's such a good idea. Staring at us in the face the whole time, and the fact that Diane sort of boosts that as an idea makes her even better as a character. And I love how everybody ends up in this episode. I think Vinda, Belle, and Carvanista being together on a ship is just like a Doctor Who sitcom waiting to happen. The couple, their baby, and their family dog. I just want to see it so bad. Claire, I hope, is joining UNIT. She was kind of with Kate Stewart at the end there. Diane dumping Dan was like, whoa, sorry? Dan is freaking adorable. Do you understand what you're doing? At the same time, she went through a hell of a lot. She was stuck in Passenger for the majority of the series. From a story point of view, if Diane said, yeah, let's start dating, Dan wouldn't be a companion right now. So you have to think about it that way. And I'm glad he did, because he's great in Eve of the Daleks. We're not going to talk about Eve of the Daleks today, but Dan, I see you. Little Phasmin shipper. The Doctor and Yaz's final scene was one of the best of their entire run, possibly my favourite Doctor and Yaz scene to date. The Doctor sort of says that she's going to start telling her things and opening up. And again, once you learn Yaz's feelings, well, we've always known of Yaz's feelings, but now they've been confirmed properly. Things like that mean so much more when you rewatch them. It's Chibnall era is special on a rewatch. It really is. And the Doctor sort of throwing the watch away was perfect. I think that's exactly what the Doctor would do in that moment in time. It worked. I wasn't pissed off by it. The things I was unsure about, however, Swarm and Azur's ending, because I love them. I don't hate it. I think it's satisfying enough. I think that's the ending they were sort of always headed for. It was just too quick. Their end scene, their final scene, felt like an afterthought, which is where that moment of mine comes in, where I think the Vanquishers almost could have been a two-part, where in one episode we're dealing with the Grand Serpent and the Sontarans, and then the next episode we're dealing with Swarm and Azur and what they want to do with time and the Pocket Watch. I think it almost could have been split. But yeah, I didn't hate it. I think it's where, like I said, I think it's where they were heading. So it's satisfying enough, but I just don't think, I think they deserved more of an epic showdown than just having time appear and take them away from everything. Another not a complaint, because I did love it and I think Jodie's fantastic in it, but time should have taken the form of Joe Martin as the fugitive Doctor, but I can deal with that. That's not too bad. I like the nods to the future that time gave. I think it's safe to say that the Master's coming back. I think that's a thing. I'm going to love every second of it. The future of Doctor Who looks good. It looks good. The rest of Chibnall's era, not that there's much to go, just 2 episodes, but I think they're going to be fabulous. And the start of Russell's era, the future of Who looks very, very bright. And then comes my other question. Is the universe still destroyed? Or did the Doctor save the day? Chris Chibnall takes his time. We could find out more in the next 2 Doctor Who episodes. The era is not yet over, so I can't complain yet that questions haven't been answered because things haven't finished. The story is not done. Help me what was going on in the Arctic with Azure, and help me as to whether the universe is fixed. They're my 2 biggest headaches of Flux, but the rest I rate extremely highly. I had such a good time. It's a blast. It's good on rewatch. And I think it's my favourite of the Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker era. That's my review of Flux. Leave your opinions of Flux in the comment section down below. I need a wee, so I'm going to go. Doctor Who reactions are coming soon. Musketeer reactions are coming soon. And my Doctor Who audio series is coming this year, 2022. It should be good on the channel. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like this video. Click the bell to get notified every time I upload a video. And I'll see you next time. Bye!